So, this is my first video kind of starting out a virtual diary because there's just a lot of transitions that are happening in my life right now, and a few things that are coming up, reminders, you can call them thoughts or channels, whatever, is to really do something different and also to just share who I am more. I truly believe that I have a pretty dope story, and just going through whatever barriers need to be gone through in order to share it. But yeah, this past several years, but especially this past couple months has been majorly transitionary for me, and there have been some things that I've been studying in particular for the past 4 years. There's also been just some thoughts in my mind that I just want to share. So this video series is meant to be just a weekly drop of my virtual diary. Things that I've been thinking about, or ideas that I'm ruminating on, or things that I'm processing, and there will be some central themes. I'm pretty consistent in what I'm studying and but the goal is just to do it. 10 minutes of just me talking. I love talking to myself normally. The conversations that I have with myself are really wonderful, and now it's just about being a bit more intentional about recording them and sharing them with my world, simply for the fact of it's important to do something different. So I don't really have an attachment as to where this goes, and if you're watching this, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. It's been a lot going on, and so I guess the format for now, I'll just share some of the things that I've been doing throughout the week, and my reflections on them, and anything else that comes up. So this past week in particular, I've been focusing on, so let's see, 3/17/2026 from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. I have been studying how to correct your status. I know excuse me. I know that don't come down, do they? The babies are asleep right now, so I get a chance to just do this, which is wonderful. But say whatever you will about status correction, or what one may believe is sovereign citizen behavior. Fundamentally, there was a time where inside of myself, I was like, this current system of governance can't be it. There's been way too many before, there's way too many, and there's just certain things, like you could say natural law, or God's law, or the way of the Great Spirit, or right relationship, or the Tao, like there's names for it, but there's just this kind of fundamental way of living life that this entire system is obviously quite literally the opposite of, which, when we think about it from a consciousness perspective, is the epitome of duality that we're given here to see. It's like, can you see yourself in everything, literally everything here? Can you actually internalize, yes, everything is separate in regards to what one may call the illusion, but do you actually see how everything is still that interconnected? So status correction, which is from what I've learned of it, status correction is essentially saying you are not a public citizen and you are choosing to be a private national. Very simply, private citizens existed in the beginning when the Constitution, and look, I know the Constitution was stolen from the indigenous people, stolen from specifically the Haudenosaunee Declaration of Peace, that confederation of, I think it was 5 indigenous tribes that created the the structure that the Constitution stole their structure from. So it's important to again pull from the original instructions that even when we're talking about the Constitution, it's like, well, you still stole that, and mostly just acknowledging that this is a lawful infrastructure that happens to affect a very large amount of people. So it's very important to understand how to navigate through that and cultivate containers that are sacred. Cultivate containers that are sacred, resourced, and impactful. That can move and circumnavigate that system. So status correction is a way through that. I've been studying with Matisse Academy. Shout out to Amir Law, who is, there's a lot of ways that people do status correction. I understand that people have been doing the UCC and have been doing, consumer law, and have been going, kind of commingling a lot of different things. I'm grateful that I didn't really start studying any of that until I tuned into exclusive equity jurisprudence, because that all seems very confusing to try to navigate all of that. And exclusive equity jurisprudence, it's very simple. It's coded by essentially 16 to, there's, when you look it up online, how many principles of equity there are. Sometimes there's only 16, sometimes there's 22. I'm not really sure which ones are like the official ones, but I guess they all have a thing. Like, if one of them, for example, is you have to do equity in order to receive equity, right? There are consistencies amongst them. But essentially, these principles are derived from the Bible, and the Bible is essentially a form of jurisprudence that is recognized in the law, but boy, you got to do your homework. And Amir has done his homework, and I'm very grateful to have tuned into Matisse Academy to be able to study alongside and build alongside. So these are just some notes that I took about listening to his masterclass on name correction, specifically for status correction. So the day one of the status correction Master Your Rights class from March 2nd to 6th, and I'm unapologetically advertising for Matisse Academy. They're on it. They're really, really on it. And just, yeah. So anyways, went over class before and took notes. Yeah, so this particular session, I've watched this class before. I was inspired by the discussion of personal security, personal liberty, and the right to enjoy property. All of these constitutional protections. What does it mean to have personal security? The Constitution protects personal security, personal liberty, and the right to enjoy property. Looking up how to get an exemplified copy, which now I know that's when you get basically a certificate from the judge. You can get a certified copy, which is what most people get whenever they get kind of documentation, or you can get exemplified copies, and that's where you get like a certificate with the judge, and they can like triple stamp it and get that extra official. We like that extra official over here. Let's see, there's and Matisse Academy also has a school, SKOOL.com, school account called the Black Sheep Community. And I looked, it's an awesome community, and there were a lot of discussions happening that I, was participating in. And I'm going to go back to that principle that I spoke about. You must do equity in order to receive equity. There was a guy asking about it, and I know that there's a lot of lawful ways, literally, like there's a lot of specificities in the law that will supplement that. But from my understanding, I'm just going to speak from this, what my response was, because I think this is an important thing. So I think it was Pomeroy that said, in order to really do equity, you have to understand that equity is something that is internalized within yourself. And just in case anybody who's watching this and doesn't quite know what I'm talking about, hasn't heard of equity before, equity is a particular kind of jurisprudence. If you look up equity jurisprudence, a brief history, it started off in English common law. It was because the common law was very harsh, and people who really needed lawful remedies for some fucked up situations, they couldn't get it because the way that the laws was written out was that it benefited those who are willing to take advantage of people. So equity became a type of law jurisprudence that essentially the king, when it first started, the king would look over a particular court session and say, based on the principles of God, which is good faith, benevolence, and what is truly the good conscience thing to do here, regardless of the other structures of the law, what would God say in this situation? That's essentially what the jurisprudence derived from, was the king saying, look, if somebody was getting fucked over by a landlord or something, even if the common law was such that, it supported the landlord, the king would be able to look over the situation, especially if it was a king who actually had the heart to do it, would look over the situation and be like, look, you got to pay that person back because you fucked them over. And I'm saying this with the divine right to rule as conscious of God. I'm letting you know, you got to tell them, you got to give them everything back. And here's my remedy. And of course, a king couldn't do all of that for an entire country. So he elected a chancellor, and then that chancellor created his own court. Chancellor eventually got the authority from the king, and that became chancery court. So that is the origination of equity jurisprudence that is fully practiced and integrated into common law, which is what the American Constitution system utilizes. Anyways, going back to the discussion about talking about this principle of equity, is in order to receive equity, you have to do equity. It is something that you have to actually live within yourself. Thinking about time. It's something you have to actually live. It's not something you can just kind of study abstractly and, apply. Like, you have to actually understand what it means to live in equity and, to live in good faith, to really live in good faith, to live in the principles of God. And I myself think that all spiritual texts, Bible, Quran, all spiritual texts have the doubt, like I said, they all have their pathways towards returning to that source feeling and knowing that we all contain. And then there are certain pathways that make sense, and so when it comes to God, when it comes to the Bible, I don't necessarily attach myself in full to saying I'm a Christian. I trust that this is a path of spiritual practice that a lot of people have taken that does have extractive roots in it. I know that, but it does have pathways. So just want to acknowledge that. But in order to do equity, in order to receive equity, you have to do equity. And I'll give a personal example, right? So, and this is the example I shared on the comment. The guy was talking about, what does this look like? And my response was, so there was a point in time where a partner that I had at the time, and without going into too much detail, this partner, he was very invested in land back, and this woman that he met was getting evicted from their home, and they bonded about certain identity aspects of who they were. including from identity to trauma to lived experience. Hello, darling. Come here. Yes. Finish this, okay? And she was experiencing a great deal of enjoyment from a kind of more than just friends kind of way. And he was enjoying that. And that brought me a tremendous amount of jealousy. The partnership itself was already pretty insecure and abusive. But because I was studying equity at the time, my people, I am part Chinese and then part British, Czechoslovakian, and German. And so you could say entirely that my people are immigrants to Turtle Island, which is where I'm on right now. We're on Turtle Island, and aka the United States of America, the Republic of the United States of America. And so as having that immigrant position, I was like, you know what? I'm going to step out of the frequency of jealousy, because thinking about the larger picture, I was like, I'm studying this. I'm going to do what I can to assist this Aboriginal chiefess with her eviction. Because it just, regardless of what identity we have, we just are aware of what our identity is, and we can use and offer the skills that we have in order to be able to support and assist. And I recognize the importance of being able to see that people do things based on what their lived experiences are, and to see the child in everything, in everybody, and operate from a place of stewardship and recognize whatever personal things that I may have, those are not as important as operating by my principles. And that turned out, and it showed people's true colors. And I got to walk away in a position that I did not intentionally intend to be better for myself, but it was. So the moral of it was that I walked in with good faith, and whether other actors intended to do good faith or not, I received, from a universal standpoint, circumstantial standpoint, just the way that life came at me, I received good faith back. And I think that's really it. It's something you have to be able to submit to a higher court, because statutory court is like, statutory jurisdiction is, it's argumentative, right? It's evidence-based. It's military jurisdiction, which military jurisdiction is essentially humans going, I'm at war with you. I throw big fast rock at you. Boom, boom, bang. Rather than seeing underneath that any kind of war is really a war within yourself, and a war that you, and a forgetting of the interconnectedness of everything, or an intentional misappropriation of that. But yeah, so that was that. That was something, again, this is just a virtual diary, so I'm sharing thoughts that were on my mind. And I filled out the paperwork for my name correction, so I'll be, once I get the funds to be able to send it via certified mail, I will do that. And I'll close on this, because I think I'm a little bit over my mark on the time limit that I wanted to share, but these are just some thoughts that have been on my mind. Just organizing life. I know that there's all kinds of crazy stuff happening outside, and it is our responsibility to provide every part of our gifts that we can to be able to provide the solutions for everything that we can that's happening, whether it be genocide, whether it be deportations, whether it be police brutality, whatever it may be. We all have tools and skills that we can contribute to being able to provide sanctuary for those that are navigating through the intensity of difficulties, and then also solutions for those who are actively perpetuating solution orientation. That's really where I'm at. So big part of that is making sure that you are stable and you are organized and you are in a position as to where you can be stable and provide that vibrational output into the world around you. So that's something I've been really thinking about, how to stay organized, how to stay in that mode. Because I just exited a domestic violence relationship, and I feel remarkably internally resourced given the circumstances. I just, of course I have tough days and I'm still getting myself together, but this idea of that's been really grounding to me is what I had mentioned earlier, that everybody is a child inside. And the question is, did that child get the resources that was necessary for them to fundamentally feel empowered in just being who they are? And when we see how the system has intentionally targeted Indigenous and Black people of color, people of culture is what I prefer to say, but particularly the diaspora, which I actually learned that the diaspora is, there's a better term for it, because like the root of the word diaspora has it's like rooted in like the Jewish diaspora or something, which is interesting. That's right. I recall that now. But oh man, we really can ground and root in having faith in ourselves, and knowing that, having trust in ourselves, and knowing that our ability to just tune into natural source, to tune into source is innate. And it's something I say often, and remind myself often, is that it is embedded within the architecture of our cellular makeup to know how to thrive without needing to consciously think it. Our cells know how to thrive. No different than how grass knows how to thrive given the correct conditions. And because we have the gift of being able to choose our conditions, even if in a particular circumstance our conditions may seem XYZ, our choice in our mind to be able to choose our perspective is really what truly allows for conditions to change. So, and I'll close with this. The other day, I was, my child had woken up, and they were just crying because, that we still, I still come with them to help them fall asleep and stuff, and they were sitting up and just kind of, and I held my arms out, because I thought they would come to me, but they were just kind of still in this like, I'm still awake, I'm still tired kind of thing, I want to go to sleep. So I just pulled them close to me and I held them while they slept, and they immediately relaxed and just fell back into sleep, into rest. And I was laying there and holding them, and I began to think about all of the mothers who wished they could still hold their children across every spectrum that implies, from mothers who have lost their children to genocide, to mothers who wish that, who lost their children, to just mothers who lost their children, fathers who lost their children. And then I thought, also about the mothers who are so grateful to hold their children, and the fathers who are grateful to hold their children. And the children who wish that they could be held. Still. And the children who love being held. It made me think about, all of these wars, all these major political issues, all of these places of power in society, and all of these things. It's like, we're born and we die. And everything else in between is kind of in between that. And it made me think about those states around those times, if we're blessed to get into eldership. It's like what really matters, right? And that moment of holding my baby, where I'm holding this beautiful reflection of infinite divine source that is powerful and gentle and messy and kind and incredible and just so alive. And here I am in a position as to where they fully care and trust and love me in the same way that I do. And that sense of connection, to be held, to be warm. That's what wars are really fought about, right? It's like people who either didn't get access to that or feel some kind of revenge because that was harmed in their life. That's what fundamentally we protect. That's what architecture of society should focus around, is being able to protect the gentle moments and derive the sacred meaning from it into replicable architecture. So, yep, I guess that concludes my virtual diary for the day, or for the week. It's been a lot. It's been a lot of ups and downs. Yesterday was kind of a hard day. Just raging all over the place. But, rage with repair and accountability. Thanks for watching, if you watched this far. And yeah, so my name is AX. And thanks for tuning in.